Let's go. Let's proceed here. We also talked about this duo issue. You mentioned the matter of changing the key. For you, it's really more of an empirical thing. You, man, I already know that if there's a piano playing, I'll go for a higher register. If it's a guitar, it's nothing that you think too much about, right? Just feel it here and play as a team, as you said, right?
And regarding what you said, sometimes you have to adapt, right? One thing, playing in a different way. Then I mentioned the example of Layla, right? That swing. I don't know what, those harmonies and everything. Caetano, too, amazing. You understand? When I went to play with him, it was a foreign sound, those American songs, right? And with an arrangement by Jacques Morellenbaugh. Understand? So
it was just more of a jazzy thing.
Exactly. With the mix of Brazilian rhythms, right?
I remember that at time. How old were you? About 10, 15 years old?
Yeah, around that. And then I think there's even more. Mateus, I think more. Because that's when I started playing with Jacques Morellenbaugh. And we've been playing together for about 20 years. So these are people in my life who have changed things, right? Rosa, Ginga, Zé Renato, then Ivan, right?
Jacques Morellenbaugh. I think we need to take a moment to talk about him, right? That's right. Jacques doesn't live in Brazil. Does he live here?
He lives in Brazil.
But he lived abroad for a while, didn't he?
No, he's a guy who travels a lot, but he's always based here.
Because every time I see, he's traveling. He's somewhere, right?
No, and he's also super important in my life. For 20 years, man, the number of places we've played. He has a contact in Europe, right? As you mentioned. So all the festivals we've done, them. Initially, he created this cello samba trio, right? Where we perform at these festivals. Initially, it was Marcelo Costa, him and me. And then Marcelo went on to play with Adriana Calcanotto, if I'm not mistaken, or with Marisa Monte. And then Bala joined. Look, man, it kept on changing like that. And Bala played for many years. Then Barata joined. And Barata has been doing... Now, Barata lives in the United States. When he can't do it, then Marcelo has been playing a lot with us now, too. So it's a job that was incredibly guitar-focused, right? Because he becomes a bassist, right? When I go to improvise. Except he has a 5-string cello. It just doesn't have the low E of the bass. It has the F.
Oh, really?
I interrupted you there.
No. I didn't know his cello had 5 strings. Has it always been like that?
Yeah. No. In recent years, he made a cello. Ping, I don't know.
Then he plays with the thumb, right? When the focus follows you.
Exactly. He does pizzicato when he's going to do the... He really becomes the bassist there.
It's because he does the opposite movement of the jazz folks. You take things from the 50s, the people with the big acoustic bass, right? You see, every now and then the guys would pick up and do something, but it wasn't a very common thing, right?
And Miroslav Vitor used it a lot.
In Europe, I think there's always a lot of that. But there are some things you get from those guys from the 50s, 60s. Every now and then there were some, especially in solos, right? Because with the band, if you wanted to do it, use the bow, you'd kind of disappear, right, man?
But then in this work, the way of thinking about the guitar is super interesting, right? Because there's that space, right? He's doing the melody with the bow, right? He plays the melody with the bow, and then there are 2 sounds. Switching to pizzicato creates a whole different atmosphere, you know? So it creates 2 environments like that in the same song, right? And you on guitar, and me on guitar, and I have to play differently, right? I have to play the bass when he's doing the melody, then it switches, and I have to do those things, the chords. We want it to be pianists. There's no such thing. You see those guys playing those chords, accompanying themselves, then they go wherever they want with the left hand, play outside, support, right? And then you have this thing when you play like that, right? The guy will have, for example, more a half diminished D and altered G, right? Do those 2/5 progressions there. When the guy plays that D there during the improvisation, he already throws in that major with the major 7th, augmented 9th, augmented 11th. It already gives that strangeness there. So when you're playing in a group, you won't do that. You just have to coordinate with everyone. Or there I do an altered. I do it with the minor 7th. but I add an augmented 11th, augmented 9th, an inversion of the half diminished to give a strangeness. And then on the dominant, I make it major with an augmented 7th, augmented 5th. Then I do the 7th. You understand? I do?
Yes, yeah.
That the augmented 5th will become a flat 13th.
Yes.
So those things where you also have that space to take advantage of the emptiness, right? Man, it's really great, dude.
Man, this one is wonderful.
So imagine living with a guy who has that arranger's mindset, you know? He gave me the opportunity to do a string arrangement on Marissa's album, That Fado Singer.
I did a string arrangement. Did you also get to accompany her?
With Marissa, no. I played on her albums. I did 2 of her albums in that arrangement.
I wanted to know the following. Let's go. You are the guy who plays guitar and acoustic guitar. And you occasionally use the guitar when you want to texture with more. Use the pick when you want to texture with more punch, right? The pick makes the sound sharper. So, I wanted to know what differentiates for you when you play the guitar with a pick from when you're playing the guitar with your fingers, for example?
Yeah. That was the dilemma that followed me and still follows me to some extent about playing, knowing the right moment in a recording. I was talking to you sometimes and the person says, "Oh, could you do a solo in this song?" Then I see that using a pick would suit the context better. And then I start warming up because I don't practice with a pick anymore. I warm up a bit and think, well, I think I can do it with a few notes, but taking advantage of that sharpness you mentioned, that punch. But with fingerstyle guitar, you don't have that thing that used to bother me about constantly switching, you know? Leaving the pick between the fingers, that switching. I used to practice that at home. It was really annoying, just switching like that. And I think I also lost that aspect of trying to emulate the piano, trying to harmonize. It feels more organic if you're doing it all with your fingers. But man, I realized that I think differently. When I'm using a pick, it's a different mindset. There are things I'm more comfortable doing, so you end up thinking that way. And then there was a time when I tried to do something hybrid, like when I wanted to play in the pick style, I would use my index finger as a pick. Did you spend some time doing that? Yeah, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I use that trick to try to play differently. But in any case, the sound is different from a pick. But at least the mindset remains the same. You do some sweeps there.
You can guide the left hand in the same way, the phrasing you're talking about, right? It won't have the same punch. But for you, the left hand...
Yeah, but with the left hand, I think differently, and I also change the things I do, right? The left hand, I don't know, and that's it. I keep changing from this mindset, seeing that this song needs a pick. This Antonio Adolfo album, which I record only with a pick, right? Only with guitar. I use a lot of pick solos like that. This Very Blue album recorded, pick solo and everything.
I asked you this because being a guitarist is one thing and being a violinist is another, right? Exactly. Those who think it's the same thing just to play the guitar. Sometimes the guitarist thinks it's just playing the guitar on the violo. It's not, right? That's why I'm trying to understand what changes for you when you play the guitar and when you're playing the violo. For example, you even use a pick on the violo. Then you think more like a guitarist when you use the pick there.
Yeah, I use it as a way to change my way of thinking too. It can be like a guitarist.
But in your daily routine, your practice is more on the violo itself.
Exactly.
And it's without a pick too.
Yeah, I stick to the violo and the study of the pick.